I want to give an announcement. On the, tomorrow morning, you are welcome to come to the service. What? How come? Tomorrow? When? 10th of May? What is happening then? You can decide when you will begin and where you want to serve God tomorrow, where your service to God will begin. Sometimes just after midnight prayer times, whoever prays in the night, or Gottfried starts early morning in the bakery. What is God's dienst? What is the service? The 2 hours on a Sunday like today? And who is serving who? Is this God's service to us or our service for God? The German language allows both directions to be true. God does serve us. He gave himself and his only Son to us, for us. And that's not just a little bit of service. That was the total consecration and giving over of himself. And what that means, we're going to try to understand for our whole life, to understand, to learn about our whole lives. And we are his servants. Is that true? Yeah, we want to serve God. Then we are his servants. And we are we are slaves to God, as is often spoken of in the Bible. And many of the fathers of faith and servants were called slaves of God, so to speak, like Moses in Exodus 14:20-32 or 31. You can read it.
Da fürchtete das Volk den Herrn und sie glaubten an den Herrn und an seinen Knecht Mose.
And he believed in the Lord and on his servant Moses. And there was many other servants as Joshua, David, Daniel, Paul, all of servants of God, and Paul. Apostle or Acts 3:13. And Jesus himself as slave or servant of God. And the preaching from Peter and what Peter preached in Acts 3:13. Jesus was also a servant or slave of God. Am also I a servant or slave of God? Are you a servant of God, either a woman or man? We don't like this term, slave. And those who know the Bible, and those of us know the Bible, what Jesus said to us. Yeah, he didn't say, I'm calling you slaves. And a servant doesn't know what the Lord does. But I call you friends, because everything I've heard from the Father, I tell you. We don't want to be slaves. We like the idea to be a friend or in a kingly priest role. Yeah, that's also true. It doesn't have to do with this, either that or this, either slave or friend. but also both.
Denn es heißt auch in Johannes
In
15,
John
14,
15:14,
ihr seid meine
you are my
Freunde,
friends
wenn ihr tut,
when
was
you
ich
do
euch
what I
gebiete
ask of
oder
you
was ich euch auftrage.
and what I tell you.
Das klingt vielleicht erstmal etwas seltsam.
It,
Freundschaft, die an Bedingungen geknüpft ist. Ihr seid
friendship that has
Freunde,
to
wenn
do
ihr
with
tut,
a certain
was ich
thing
euch
that you
sage,
do,
was
that
ich euch
that
gebiete.
you are obedient to
Aber auch das,
what he's saying. Is that a
denke
friend?
ich, ein
It
wichtiger
sounds crazy,
Gesichtspunkt. In welchem Sinn
creates a problem for us,
ist
but
Freund
it's
zu
a
sein,
very important point.
Freund Gottes zu sein,
A
auch
friend
gemeint
of
ist.
God.
Nicht unbedingt im Sinne, hey Kumpel, sondern
It's not something like just a simple friendship that you have with
die wir
someone
von
in this
Herzen
world,
aus ihm
but it is a
dienen
place where you
wollen,
can
aber auf der
give
anderen
him your
Seite auch
heart, you can
Freund
serve him,
Gottes zu sein.
and also to be his
Fragen
friend,
dürfen,
and you can ask
Herr,
him,
wie meinst du das?
and to
Was
ask him what
sagst
does
du
he
dazu?
mean. You ask him what his opinion is about things. You talk to him as you would talk to a friend.
Vielleicht können wir uns also einigen, dass
Maybe
wir
we
berufen
can
sind, Gott zu dienen,
maybe we can
aber
understand
nicht
together
aus
and be
Zwang,
unity, that we are
sondern aus
served, we are
Dankbarkeit,
called to serve God, not because of
Überzeugung.
we have no other option, but because of thankfulness and
Die
because we
meisten
are
von euch
convinced to
haben
serve Him is
wohl
the most important
von
thing.
dem Erlebnis
And
Zinzendorf
you've probably heard
gehört,
about the
gelesen,
experience of
dass
Zinzendorf
in einer Galerie
in a
als
gallery
19-Jähriger
in
Düsseldorf
Düsseldorf
hatte,
as he was 19 years
als
old,
vor einem
and he
Gemälde
stood
von dem
before a
Maler
painting,
Domenico Veti
a
stand.
painter,
Vielleicht können wir
Domenico
das jetzt mal
Feti,
zeigen.
and this
Darauf ist
is today
handelnde
in
Jesus
Munich,
mit der
um,
Dornenkrone
and this is
dargestellt.
Jesus who is suffering with the thorn of
Steht
crowns,
geschrieben in
and
lateinischen
underneath is
Buchstaben,
stated in Latin,
Deutsch übersetzt. Ich
I've done this for you,
dies für dich getan.
and what will
Was
you do
tust
for
du
me?
für mich?
I have done this for you, what will you do for
Dieses
me?
Bild und dieser Spruch
This
unter
picture and this
Zinzendorf, und
and this
stand
saying, really,
lange vor diesem Bild,
he stood before this picture a long
sann
time
drüber nach.
and thought about it.
Was tat ich für dich? Das tat ich für
I have
dich.
done this for you,
Was tust du
what
für
will you
mich?
do for me?
Diese Frage
This
können
question
wir uns wohl auch
can
während
and
des
should
Stellen.
help us to ask ourselves, what do I do for Jesus?
Nein, nicht im Sinne, wir müssen etwas leisten,
Nothing that we have to do for His grace,
werden wir vielleicht gleich sagen.
to get His
Ja,
grace.
aber was bestimmt unser Handeln?
But what is the motive or the orientation behind what we're doing? Are we thankful for the salvation through grace?
Was ist unsere
And
Bestimmung?
what is our calling?
Gott hat uns
God has created us to be His image, and to be a partner or someone that He has fellowship with.
auch zu seinen Kindern gemacht.
He's made us to be His children,
Und doch werden auch die Väter des Glaubens,
and even the fathers in faith were called
also
servants or slaves.
Kind, Knecht,
What does this mean?
ja, alles etwas
A child, a friend, a servant, or a slave? What is true?
Gesichtspunkte deutlich.
There is many
Unsere
other
Beziehung
ways of looking,
letztlich zu Gott.
and that our relationship with
Es ist
God.
interessant, dass in 2. Mose
And
23,
in
25
Exodus
so
23:25,
heißt, mal die nächste Bibelstelle, dem Herrn, euren Gott, sollt ihr dienen,
you can read it.
so wie er dein Brot und dein Wasser, so wird er dein Brot und dein Wasser segnen, und ich will alle Krankheit von dir wenden. Interessant finde ich den Zusammenhang zwischen
Interesting, I find the relationship between serving God, and then there was going to be blessing that He was promised.
ich will alle Krankheit.
I will take all the sicknesses from you.
Aber dieser Auftrag, ihr sollt Gott dienen,
But the call is to serve
das
God.
ist der Auftrag für das Volk Gottes,
And that is
zu dienen.
the call to the people of God to serve
Und
Him.
da gleich mal ein Schwenk ins Neue
And then
Testament,
if we look at the New Testament,
Blick auf Jesus,
if we look at Jesus,
da heißt
in
es ja
Matthew
Matthäus
20,
20,
28,
Vers 28, Der Menschensohn ist nicht gekommen, um sich dienen zu lassen, sondern um zu dienen und
You
sein
can
Leben zu geben
you can
zur Erlösung der
read
Welt.
this as well.
Jesus selber
Jesus
ist
himself
gekommen,
came
nicht als der souveräne
as
Herrscher,
not the
der
sovereign
die Macht
Lord
ergreift
of
und die
everything,
Erwartung erfüllt und die
that
Römer vertreibt.
everybody's supposed
Er ist
to
gekommen,
serve
um zu
him and
dienen.
he would take the Romans
Er hat
away
uns
and so forth.
den
But
zweiten Stück
he came to serve.
durch die Fußwaschung
And the biggest
das Opfer
example of this he showed through washing the feet of his disciples
gedient
in
hat,
John
ihr
13.
Leuten in die Füße zu waschen. Und so heißt es auch im
In
Philipperbrief,
Philippians 2:7,
Jesus, er entäußerte sich selbst und nahm
and
Knechtsgestalt
he
an.
took, you can read it as well, he
Und
took
er
this
erniedrigte
the
sich
form
selbst
of a servant
und war
slave.
gehorsam bis zum Tode. Philipper 2,7. Ja. Denn Jesus
And he
kam,
was
um zu dienen.
obedient even to death on
Was
the
bedeutet
cross.
das für uns?
And if Jesus came to serve us, what does that mean for
Wir
us?
sollen nachfolgen,
We should follow in his
ihm
footsteps.
nachfolgen und seinen Fußstapfen. Und ich habe
1 Peter 2:21
dann nochmal
is
weiter
an
im
example
Alten
of this.
Testament geguckt.
And then I looked in the Old Testament
Das
again,
fand ich interessant,
and I found this to be interesting.
den Mose
In
gebraucht hat,
second,
um sein
that
Volk aus
Moses was
Ägypten
used to
herauszuführen.
take his people out of Egypt.
Und Mose trat ja mehrmals vor dem Pharao
And he came before the Pharaoh many
und
times.
sagte, lass mein Volk
And he said,
ziehen.
let my people go.
Warum?
Why?
Lass mein
What
Volk
for?
ziehen,
Let
lass es mir
my people
dienen
go
in der Wüste.
so that they can serve me in the wilderness. Exodus
Und
7:16.
das war nicht nur ein einmaliges Argument
And this
von dem
wasn't just a
Mose,
one-time argument from him,
sondern immer wieder bei den Plagen.
but because he couldn't think of anything better to say, but he was always saying, by all the plagues, let my people go so they can serve me.
Ja, vor der zweiten Plage, nach der dritten, vor der fünften
And
Plage,
the second, the third, the fourth, the seventh, the eighth,
lass mein Volk ziehen, dass es mir diene
let my people go so they would serve me
in der Wüste.
in the wilderness.
Was? In der Wüste, Gott?
What do you mean, in the wilderness? Is
Wie sollte denn das aussehen?
God serving him in the wilderness? How can it look?
Nicht möglich, Gott auch in Ägypten
And it's
zu
not
dienen.
possible to serve God in Egypt itself.
Sollten die in die Wüste ziehen?
Why should they go into the wilderness for
Einfach
that?
Gott in der Wüste dienen?
God just simply to serve him there only in the wilderness.
Ja, einerseits ist Ägypten auch für uns sowas wie das Synonym des
Egyptian
alten
is the
Lebens,
synonym of old life,
Herrschaftsbereich
the lordship of sin in our lives
kann man Gott nicht dienen.
in this land.
Deshalb
You can't serve
ist
God,
Verlassen so wichtig.
so it's important to leave it,
Sünde bekennen, empfangen,
to confess your sin, to receive the forgiveness, to receive
Satans
salvation, as in
hineinversetzt.
freedom from sin,
Herrschaftsbereich.
and to exchange the area of lordship.
Paulus es da ausdrückte. Gott
In
sei Dank,
Romans 6:17,
der Sünde
you
gewesen
can read that
seid,
as well.
aber nun frei geworden und Knechte der Gerechtigkeit. Knechte der
To be slaves of righteousness.
Gott dienen.
God's to serve God in
Wie
the
sollte
wilderness.
das damals aussehen?
How could that happen? What it would look like to build an
In der
altar
Wüste, wo es fast nur Sand gibt, da
where there's
muss man
only
vielleicht
sand,
Steine suchen, sich
and
ein Altar zu bauen.
where you have to look for stones to build an
In
altar
der Wüste
in the
ein
wilderness,
Lobpreisfestival veranstalten.
to have a worship ceremony or a worship
Das ging damals
festival.
eine Wüstenwanderung bevorstand
That the people were walking through the desert, through the wilderness,
und Versagen.
met many challenges and many
Aber auch der
times where they
Achtung von
failed,
Gottes Hilfe und Leitung,
but also experiencing God's help, His
denken
leadership,
Wolkensäule,
the
Feuersäule,
the pillar of cloud and fire,
denkt an die
and then
Versorgung
the support or
mit
the
Manna
what they
vom Himmel.
received from the birds and the bread from heaven
Und Gott ließ
as
sie auch die
nourishment,
Stiftshütte
and how we let them build
bauen als
the
ein Ort der
tabernacle
Begegnung
as a place of meeting with him,
sie ihnen auch dienen konnten.
and where they could also serve him.
Und wir meinen vielleicht oft auch recht schnell,
And
wir können
maybe
Gott
we
doch
think
nicht in
we
wüsten
can't serve him in
Situationen,
a situation where it feels like a wilderness in our lives,
Krankheit
in sickness, in
Lebenskrisen,
life
können
crises.
wir doch nicht
We can't
Gott
serve God in
wirklich
that.
dienen,
Other,
oder?
is it possible?
Doch, meine ich. Aber wie können wir Gott
Independent.
wirklich
And how can we serve God in every situation? How can we serve him?
Wir erinnern uns vielleicht auch an Maria und Martha.
We can think about Maria and Martha in Luke 10.
Diente Jesus.
Martha was serving him, and she did so much in the house to serve him food.
Und Maria saß
And Mary stayed at his feet and listened to him.
Wir hören diese Geschichte oftmals
We
nur
listen to
in
this
die eine
story
hat es
as
richtig gemacht, die
one
andere falsch.
did the right thing, the other did the wrong
Ich denke
thing.
nicht, dass das ganz so klar
And I don't think it's so
dargestellt
clear
sondern
to say one did the right thing, one did the wrong
aber
thing.
in der richtigen
But
Einstellung.
both had their hearts in the right place and wanted to, and it has to do with the right heart, but doing the right thing at the right time.
Den Samariter,
Or think of this Samaritan in Luke 10 as well. He was helping people, or one person, but the priest and the Levite went around and didn't do anything. They didn't want to make themselves unholy and make their service in the temple impossible.
welcher Dienst
Which service is the most important, or is more important for God?
oder der
The service in the temple, or the service to people in their need, in their situation, to help them?
Und das heißt ja auch in Matthäus
And then Matthew 25:40,
45, was ihr getan habt,
and
einen
what you have done to
von
the
diesen meinen
least of my
Brüdern, das
brothers,
habt ihr mir getan.
you've done for me.
Also Barmherzigkeitsdienst
Yeah, works or service of mercy is a very important service for God. This is something we could say.
Aber wir sind Menschen und denken vielleicht auch manchmal in diesen Kategorien
And we are people who think in categories
die Jünger.
like the disciples at that time.
Wer wird wohl der Größte sein?
And who's going to be the greatest in God's kingdom?
Wird wohl der wichtigste
And
Dienst
what is the
sein?
most important service that was being done or would have been done?
Möge uns Gott da die Augen öffnen,
Maybe God can show us this and open our eyes
wie mich sieht.
and show us how He looks at us.
Denn wir werden ermahnt,
And because we are being counseled
auch und unseren Dienst nicht in erster Linie für
to
Menschen
not
zu
to
tun,
serve people or to do it before
auf
people's
Gott hin auszurichten.
eyes, but to
Paulus das mal so
in
erkannt und
Galatians 1:10,
gesagt, wenn ich noch Menschen gefällig wäre,
if I'm still serving people, I'm no servant of Christ.
sehr klares Wort von ihm,
It's a very clear word from Him,
nicht menschengefällig.
not to be serving men as we want to oppress them and get their praise.
Nach meiner Predigt niemand geklatscht.
Oh, no one clapped after my preaching today.
Wie nun aber kann und sollte unser
And
Gottesdienst
how should our service to God be?
für Gott konkret
How
aussehen?
should it look?
Dabei denke ich jetzt also nicht
I'm not thinking on the Sunday service,
die euch ja durch meine Einleitung schon deutlich geworden ist.
whether, through my introduction you realize I'm not speaking about our service on Sundays.
Wir quasi, ich sag mal, unsere Liturgie,
We have our liturgy,
gewohnten Ablauf,
and we have our way of doing things, the sequence of doing things.
gefällt.
Maybe God is pleased by it, I hope.
Und wir fühlen uns hinterher vielleicht ein bisschen besser.
And maybe we feel better afterwards.
Ich war im Gottesdienst.
I was in the service.
Dienst für Gott.
Service for God?
So, nee, das betrifft mich.
That doesn't have to do with me personally.
Mögen manche denken.
I have
Ich habe einen
another occupation. I have a bakery.
Ingenieurbüro.
I have an engineer office.
Nachfolger. Jeder Jünger,
But
Jesu
everyone is a
hat
follower
mehrere
of Jesus.
Aufträge bekommen.
And we've received more than just one
Das sind, so will ich's mal sagen,
office or
Dienstaufträge,
area of
die wir
work.
mehr oder
And what is
weniger
our
jeder
service area of work that we need to do?
als Jesu Jünger und Nachfolger bekommen hat. Die Reihenfolge ist jetzt nicht Wertigkeit, sondern beliebig, wenn ich jetzt
When I talk about these
speziell
things,
Punkte nenne,
these
was
areas of service,
Dienstaufträge
they're
sind.
not in terms of one is more important than two,
Als erstes
but I say of one, worship the Lord.
Psalm 146,
Psalm
1, 2,
Psalm 146, 1 and 2, or Psalm 103, any other
das
psalms.
ist doch ein schöner Auftrag.
This is a wonderful service. Worship or praise the Lord. Especially we can do that when we're doing good.
Ich reiße die Dinge nur kurz an, weil
I'm just going to talk about them briefly because many of them are just obvious to us
nachlesen könnt.
and where you can.
Als zweites,
And the second thing,
Aufträge ist, fragt nach dem Herrn und seiner
and
Macht und sucht sein Angesicht.
look for his, seek his face. All 1 Chronicles 16:11. Ask after God and his power and seek his face all the time.
Im Jesus-Haus Dienst tun,
I don't have
meine
to
Bäckerei verkaufen.
be in Jesus-Haus all the time. I don't have to sell my bakery and be in Jesus-Haus all the time, but the Lord, to serve the Lord where we are, and to be open that God can speak to us during our work. I experience as well.
Grundsätzlich immer offen zu sein und auf Gott hin innerlich ausgerichtet zu sein.
And to be oriented.
Dritte
The
Dienstauftrag
third one is
einer trage des anderen Last.
everyone, Galatians 6:2, everyone carries the burden of the other so that we can fulfill the law of Christ.
Was könnte das praktisch heißen? Wer braucht Hilfe?
And how does this look personally and concretely? Who needs help? Who should we be helping?
War innerlich zu hören.
Galatians 6:2 again. What does it mean to carry the other person's
Und
burden?
damit im Zusammenhang viertens, dienet
And then
einander.
the fourth, serve each other with the gifts that you've received. 1 Peter 4:10.
Und ja, zu erkennen und zu wissen, was ist meine Gabe,
To realize what is my anointing or my gifting,
Begabungen soll ich noch weiterentwickeln.
on which areas should I not be developing? Should I be developing?
Aber dieses dienet einander,
Serve each other,
da zu sein.
to be there for each other.
Und ein fünfter
And the
Dienstauftrag,
fifth
nennt
is
sich
to
mal
go,
ganz klar,
is
nennt
very
sich auch
clear,
vielleicht mancher denken,
finally
Gehe
saying
in
this,
alle Welt,
to go into the whole world,
predigt das
and
Evangelium,
preach the gospel, and
alle Völker.
speak to all the disciples, to make disciples of all the people in the world. Matthew 28:19. These are examples, and there are many other examples that you could add to it.
Und wenn wir uns manchmal vielleicht fragen, welcher Dienst
And which area of service is the most important? And I think, well, ours isn't that so important.
keine falsche Bescheidenheit,
No,
sondern
not to think wrongly and wrong
das ist das, was ich
humility,
tun kann und tun möchte und tun soll
but
von Gott her.
but to think about how God has called us, what we could do for Him, and how to what He's called us, and that we do it from our heart. It's important, everything that we do.
Und da kann, ich sage es jetzt mal so, und ich mich nicht hinstellen und sagen, oh ja, ich habe einen ganz wichtigen Dienst
Or to think I have the most important, I've done such an important thing. And I was 6 years in Ethiopia and I served Him there. That was so important. That was one of the most important and worthy areas of service. No. Luke 17:10. We are unworthy servants. We have done what we should have done. We don't have, we don't need to be especially praised. We just did our job. Yeah, we've just done what was asked of us. It's important that I know what I should be doing, what is my area of service. I can't do everything. Every sermon, every preacher will put emphasis on something else. Oh, I have to do that as well. What is my calling? What is your calling? This question, especially in our youth, should be an important question for us in every area of life, time of life, and to be looking at this question anew. Hearing and doing, they belong together. Not just important life decisions, but in everyday life. I sometimes, I think to myself, I ask myself, and what is important right now? What should I do? And then I get an impulse, and then I do that, and then I can go in peace. And then I have peace when I do that, and that gives God glory in very practical, everyday things. What Mary had said was very important. You know what she had told somebody to do by the wedding in Cana. She said to the servants, and what He says to you, do it. John 2:5. And it also has to do for us hearing and what He says to us, what He says to me, hearing and doing. And also the letter to the Colossians that Paul wrote in 3:23, everything what you do it from your heart and to the Lord, but not before people or to the people. And not to be pleasing people. Yeah, not to please people by what I do in the first instance. And everything I can and I should serve God with my whole life and live before Him, and to know that He's always with me, around me, and thus He wants us to also to have joy in life, to celebrate it, to enjoy it. Yeah, really? Some people who are very critical of this slogan from Joyce Meyer of everything, to celebrate everything or to enjoy everything. But it's very important that we have fulfillment in our lives, and that we have enjoyment and we have joy in the life that we have in Him and with Him.
Wir haben mehrmals von den den Film Anatevka
If you've heard
gesehen
of the film
oder
Anatevka
früher gab es
or
das
The
Theaterstück
Fiddler
in
on the
Berlin,
Roof,
der Fiedler auf dem Dach. Und in diesem
in
Film hat mich so
this
angesprochen,
film,
die Frau
the
gestellt wird,
milkman
wie dieser
Tevje,
jüdische Milchmann Tevje in so einer
he
natürlichen
had such a natural
Beziehung mit Gott
relationship with God.
lebte.
He
Wie er mitten im
lived in an
Alter
everyday life.
nach oben schaute
He always spoke to God. He
und sein
looked up to
Selbstgespräch
God
mit Gott
and
führte.
had a relationship, a conversation with
Gott
God.
in seine Gedanken damit einbezogen hat.
He always brought God into
Das
his
ist für mich so
thoughts.
ein
This
Bild
was
wie,
very good
ja,
picture
ein bisschen Entspanntheit,
to
aber
be
in einer
also
Beziehung
just
mit
relationship
Gott hier
to
leben
be in a
können.
relationship with God, like we should and
Immer
could and
wieder
can have,
aufsehen, Reflexion.
and to look to Him and
Ja,
reflect.
was denkst du, Herr?
And what do you
Ist
think,
jetzt
Lord?
dran?
What do you think is important right now?
Ich weiß es nicht weiter.
I'm not sure right now what I should
Leite
do.
mich.
Please lead me, Lord.
Es ist schön und spannend.
It is very wonderful and also exciting to live with God.
Das kann ich hier sehr
I can
mit
also
Dankbarkeit bezeugen.
really testify to this with
Jeden
thankfulness,
Tag neu mit Gott
to
zu
be
leben,
with God every
von
day,
ihm leiten zu
to
lassen.
be led by Him.
Ich darf Fehler machen,
I can make
mich korrigieren
I can
lassen.
make failures. I can let myself be corrected. I can serve Him in Ethiopian,
Im Büro
in the
Zahlen
office,
zu jonglieren
to work with the numbers,
oder bei Werterhaltungsmaßnahmen
and
an den uns anvertrauten
yeah, to
Gut.
take care of the things that He's given us to take care of,
Irdische Hütte,
as,
die wir hier
as
haben.
and
Aber auch im Gebet und
also in
Lobpreis,
prayer and worship,
im
prayer,
Gespräch mit anderen,
and talking, conversations with
die
other
mich
people.
vielleicht beim Umzug oder
If I
beim
help,
Hausrestaurierung
if I help somebody with the moving or
oder
their
indem du für
renovations,
Kranke einkaufen
and if I
gehst, verkaufst,
go things for people,
indem du für
buy
deine Kinder und
their
deine Familie
groceries or
sorgst.
cook for them, if I take care of children, my
Lass
own
dich
children and other
ermutigen und
children,
einladen, Gott
I want
zu
you
dienen
to be encouraged
mit deinem
and
ganzen Leben,
invite you to serve God
nicht
with
nur
your whole life,
sonntags
not just
oder
Sundays or in
bestimmten
special
Situationen.
situations.
Deshalb, du kannst selbst
You can
entscheiden,
decide
wann dein
when your
Gottesdienst
service to God
morgen
begins,
beginnt.
when it starts tomorrow.
Du kannst deine Arbeit
You can
mit
do
Gott
your
tun. Er
work
ist an
with
deiner
God.
Seite,
He is on your
er ist
side.
mit dir,
He is
auch in deinem Beruf,
in your
bei der Hausarbeit
occupation, in
oder im Gebetsraum.
your work at home or in the prayer room.
Mit Freude
Serve the
heißt
Lord
es
with
Psalm
joy. Psalm 102.
freiwillig, nicht aus
Freely,
Zwang mit einem
not
schlechten
because you're
Geist, sondern
forced to,
aus Dankbarkeit,
but because
weil der
of
Vater uns
gratefulness,
in Jesus alles
because the Father has given us everything in Jesus.
ein jeder frage sich selbst,
Everybody
beziehungsweise
asks
Gott,
God
was
themselves,
bedeutet das für mich,
what does this mean
für
for
den
me,
morgigen Tag,
for tomorrow, for
für
the
die neue
new week,
Woche, für mein Leben,
for my life?
was er euch sagt,
What He tells you,
das tut.
do it.
Und seid gesegnet
Be
für die
blessed
neue Woche.
for this new week.
Amen.
Amen.